The Seven Wonders of Sassafras Springs, Chapter 2. Day 1. I Go Searching. The next morning didn't seem that different from any other Wednesday in July. Up at first light, I stepped out onto the porch and stared across the yard, out at the fields, the orchard, and beyond. I didn't see a thing that would impress an Egyptian. I fed Murph and Pat while Pa milked Mabel and Mert. Then we harnessed the horses and headed straight to the fields. By that year, which was 1923, a few farmers had tractors, but Paul said the problem with machines was when you said whoa, they kept going, unlike Murph and Pat. I knew it'd be foolish to look for wonders on our own land. I'd been up and down the rows of corn and beans so often. I knew every clump of dirt. While I weeded, I did come up with a plan of how to start my search. When you're plowing or mowing, you start at the beginning of one row and go all the way to the end. Then you move up the next row to the end, and so on. That's how I'd go looking for wonders, up one country lane and down the next, until I covered all of Sassafras Springs. 7 days should be enough time. Still, I wasn't convinced I'd find anything awe-inspiring. In the late afternoon, Paul gave me a break from chores. That alone would count as a wonder in my book, though I didn't say it out loud. He might have called off the deal altogether, and I wasn't about to have let that happen. I stuffed the tablet in my back pocket, and Sal and I walked out to the Yellow Dog Road. That's what they call the wide strip of dirt that goes straight down the middle of Sassafras Springs. In winter, it's as slick as glass. In spring and fall, it turns to mush. In summer, it's plain yellow dirt, so dusty I could taste it. I've got a plan, Sal, I announced. Sal wasn't much interested in plans. She let her nose lead her where it would, usually toward the nearest squirrel or rabbit. Across the road, I could see a group of farms up on a rocky ridge midway up Redhead Hill. There were a couple more in the valley below. On our side of the road was our place, three other farms, and the community church. If you went all the way down Yellow Dog Road, you'd connect with the county road and two-lane highway that brought the occasional traveler or salesman to town. My best friend Jeb and I used to sit at the crossroads when we were younger, waiting for something interesting to come along, like an automobile or a circus wagon. Once, when we were 8, a city fellow in a straw hat and red suspenders stopped and asked us directions. He was traveling downstate to attend a college of mines and metallurgy. Didn't that sound like a fine place? Folks sitting around studying gold and silver all day. Jeb and I talked about it all summer, rolling that name around. College of Mines and Metallurgy. At the crossroads of County Road and Yellow Dog lay a scattering of stones and of stores and houses. It wasn't much of a town, though there was talk of building a community hall. Just talk, Paul said. On the other side of County Road ran Liberty Creek. It was a good place to swim, skip stones, fish, or float a small boat, if you watched out for rocks and didn't mind the occasional snake. Wild sassafras grew along the banks, and upstream a spring fed the creek. It's not too hard to figure out how our town got its name. Standing there in the middle of Yellow Dog Road, I could see plenty of land, but nothing more wonderful than barns and silos. Maybe we need some company, I told Sal. No use doing all this alone. I walked down to Austin's to see if Jeb wanted to come along. Even though his family farm was next door to ours, it was still a hike to get there. Dusty, their big brown dog, ran up to greet Sal and me and led us to the vegetable patch, where Jeb was riding herd on a whole pack of Austins. He had 4 younger sisters and 4 younger brothers. The babies were inside with their ma and the oldest girl Maggie, but the rest of them hung all over Jeb as usual. You hardly ever saw him without a brother clinging to his leg, a sister riding piggyback, and another one tugging at his back pocket. Fortunately, Jeb was good-natured. "Want to come searching with me?" I asked him. "Looking for trouble? I got some here," said Jeb, ruffling Flo's hair. "Hi, Eben," she said with a giggle. "Got any candy?" Before I could answer, Charlie lunged for Sal, yelling, "Doggy!" She escaped his grip in the nick of time. Don't get me wrong, I like Jeb's brothers and sisters, But whenever I tried to tell Jeb he was lucky, he'd say, "Take as many of 'em as you want." I was hoping you and me could go searching for wonders, like the seven wonders of the world. Remember? In geography? Jeb grabbed Fred's overalls just in time to keep him from mowing down a tomato plant. "Nothing like that around here," he said. "You got your work cut out for you." "If I can find seven wonders in Sassafras Springs, I'll get to go to Colorado on the train." Jeb let out a low whistle. "By yourself?" I nodded, just as Bessie burst into tears because Joey was dangling a fat worm in her face. "Maybe tomorrow," said Jeb, picking up Bessie. "I kind of have my hands full today." I trudged back toward the road with Sal at my heels. "Looks like we're on our own," I told her. She wagged her tail, grateful like. We took the side road off Yellow Dog and headed up the hill, past fields tall with corn, aiming toward the farthest side of the ridge. "I guess this is the beginning, girl," I told Sal. Well, the two of us walked and climbed and searched and explored, but we didn't see anything out of the ordinary. At this rate, at the end of 7 days, I'd have an empty tablet and a dog full of cockleburs. I sat down and tried to pick the ornery stickers out of Sal's fur, and she licked my hands in thanks. "Well, girl, guess we better keep on looking." Then I remembered part of a verse I'd heard last week in Sunday school. "He that seeketh findeth." That sounded encouraging. I recalled another part of that chapter that said, "Ask, and it shall be given to you." Maybe finding wonders would require some asking, though speaking up did not come naturally to me, as Aunt Pretty liked to point out. I craned my neck and glimpsed the very top of Redhead Hill, trying to imagine how much higher Silver Peak Mountain would be. "Come on, girl," I told Sal, as I stood up and brushed off the seat of my trousers. "Let's go seek and find some wonders." The farthest farmhouse belonged to Mr. and Miss Orville Payne. Once a month or so I saw Miss Almeda Payne in our parlor, along with a half-dozen other ladies from the church sewing circle. How their needles kept up with their tongues was a mystery to me, but I thought I could call on Miss Payne and see if she had anything astonishing to show me. There were two windows on the front of the Payne house, one on each side of the door. With the shades pulled halfway down, they looked like a pair of sleepy eyes. I took a deep breath and knocked. It was dead quiet inside. I thought Miss Payne might be out back and went to check. As I rounded the side of the house, I practically ran smack into Mr. Payne, and he wasn't pleased to see me. Neither was his huge dog, who bared his yellow teeth at Sal. She stood her ground but kept quiet, as the Payne dog was double her size. Sal was brave, but she wasn't stupid. Orville Payne was a tall man, so tall that when I looked up at him I could see clear inside his nostrils. They were flaring like an angry bull's. "What are you doing here?" he asked in a gravelly voice. "Why, looking for Miss Payne. It's me, Eben McAllister." He frowned and blew his red nose on a ragged bandana. "Why ain't you home with your pa?" "Well, sir, I'm looking around Sassafras Springs for a wonder. You know, like a wonder of the world." Mr. Payne spit on the ground. "More like you're nosing around to see if anybody has anything worth stealing. Now, you get out of here and stay out. I don't want boys like you snooping around my house. Go on now." He didn't have to tell me twice. As Sal and I hightailed it out of there, my heart was leaping around in my chest. Folks in Sassafras Springs were usually friendly enough, but they expected their neighbors to mind their own business, which just did not include asking about wonders. When we were out of Orville Payne's sight, I stopped to catch my breath. I was ready to give up and go home. I decided to try keeping my eyes open for wonders while keeping my mouth shut. On the way back down the hill, I rounded a bend and saw somebody waving at me, friendly like. I waved back. When Sal and I got closer, I saw that the arm was really the sleeve of a dress hanging on a washing line along the shirts and unmentionables, as Aunt Pretty called underwear. They were outside the house where Miss Pritchard, my Sunday school teacher, lived. Just then, Miss Pritchard herself stepped out from behind the wash and waved. She was small and round. Round face, round curls, big round flowers on her dress. Neat as a pin, Aunt Pretty would say. "Is that you, Eben?" she called. Sal raced ahead, but I was in no hurry. The house was so small, I don't know how the Pritchards raised a family in it. Aunt Pretty said Miss Pritchard had no business putting on airs and graces when her house was no better than anybody else's. Not that anyone would know, since it was about as hard to get invited into the Pritchards' house as to be admitted through the pearly gates. I didn't exactly expect to find a statue of Zeus hiding behind the picket fence. "Howdy," I said when I finally reached the wash line, feeling kind of shy. It didn't seem right to be standing next to my Sunday school teacher's bloomers. She asked how Pa was and how Aunt Pretty was and how I was, all the while pulling down sun-dried pillowcases and folding them. "We're all fine, ma'am." Miss Pritchard liked to get right to the point. "Well, what can I do for you?" It was Miss Pritchard who taught me that Bible verse about asking and receiving, so I took a deep breath and summoned up a chunk of courage. "Maybe you could help me find something, ma'am. You see, I made a bet with Pa." "I do not approve of gambling." Miss Pritchard's voice was firm. "Neither does the good book." The woman looked harmless, but one time she caught Albert Bowie making faces behind her back during class. She yanked his ear hard until he cried, "Uncle." Albert's acted like a genuine angel ever since, at least on Sunday mornings. "Not a gambling kind of bet," I explained. "I'm trying to find a wonder here in Sassafras Springs, a man-made wonder, something amazing and awe-inspiring." I stopped to draw a breath. "Like the pyramids, but it doesn't have to be that big." "What a funny idea," Miss Pritchard said. "I think you're on a fool's errand looking for wonders around here. Better you go home and study that Sunday school lesson. Book of Mark, chapter 4, verse 30. The parable of the mustard seed. Study that even, instead of bothering folks for wonders." Clutching the pillowcases close to her chest, she walked toward her house. "See you on Sunday," I called to her. Sal had already beat me to the road. I hated to think of that train to Colorado leaving the station without me, but I didn't out a lot of hope. My mind was fixed on snow-covered mountains, so Sal heard her calling before I did. "Come back, Eben McAllister! Come on back here!" Suddenly, Miss Pritchard was racing down the road after me. "I just remembered something. Don't know how it slipped my mind." Miss Pritchard was a mite plump, so she was breathing hard by the time she caught up with me. "I don't have some fancy pyramid, but if you want to see the greatest wonder of this world or any other, well, just follow me. Don't dawdle now." She marched to her house like a soldier, and you can bet I followed her. I didn't want to get my ear pulled. "Not you," I told Sal when we got to the door. Sal's not one to get her feelings hurt. She lay down in the cool shade outside as I stepped through the doorway. Wouldn't Aunt Pretty be surprised to know I was being invited into the Pritchards' house? Wouldn't she like to know every last detail? Miss Pritchard went straight to a tall cabinet, opened a drawer, and picked up something wrapped in tissue paper. "I haven't shown this to anyone in years, but you'd ask for a wonder, even. You'll never see more of a wonder than this." She carefully peeled back the paper. A shriveled up face stared at me, sent shivers up my spine. I knew it was an Applehead doll, but it reminded me of a shrunken head I'd seen in my exploring book. Aunt Pretty told me that when she was growing up, the only dolls country girls had were made of rags, dried apples, or clothespins. Miss Pritchard's doll had yellow yarn hair, an old-fashioned dress, and two carved hollows out of the leathery apple for eyes. Why anybody, even a girl, would take a fancy to a doll was beyond me. But this one was something special. This one was ugly as sin. "I see you don't fully appreciate Miss Zeldy," said Miss Pritchard. "Still, I promise you, this doll is a wonder, formed by the hand of man with a spirit that goes beyond anything man can understand." She cradled the doll and sat down. "Only a doll, you may be thinking, Eben. An old woman's doll at that. However, once you hear Miss Zeddy's story, even a young man like you will sit up and take notice." I was already taking notice, especially when Miss Pritchard held Zeddy on her knee like some hideous child. I half expected the doll to start talking. I felt those hollowed-out eyes staring right through me, and the hairs on the back of my neck tingled. Miss Pritchard pointed to a hard green sofa opposite her. "Sit down now, Eben McAllister, and pay attention to what I have to say," she ordered me. So I sat, because when folks in Sassafras Springs start to tell a story, it's likely to take a while. Miss Pritchard's story. Miss Zeldy's message. I grew up over on Ledge Ridge. My papa was the preacher there. You didn't know I was a preacher's daughter, did you? Papa was an educated man, been to seminary. He read books, even though we didn't have 2 pennies to rub together, ministering to the poor miners. We thought we were as rich as kings, the way Mama sewed and cooked. Papa was handy too, carving up tops and other toys for us. Most years at Christmas, we were lucky enough to get an orange, a peppermint stick, and a new pair of socks or a handkerchief embroidered with Mama's fine stitching, more than most. Not like you young people today who get store-bought gifts. In spite of Mama's good care, I was a sickly child, and always small for my age. One year, when I was about 6, I guess, a cough took hold of me and wouldn't let go. Mama tried everything: red alderbark tea, hot water with onion juice. Once Mama even made Papa get me a little whiskey to drink in hot water. It would have been a scandal if his congregation found out, but they were desperate to cure me. How people get to liken the taste of spirits, I'll never know, and I certainly hope you resist that temptation. Anyway, Mama'd rub my chest with a mixture of kerosene, turpentine, camphor, and lard. Still, my cough got stronger and my body got weaker. My folks didn't think I'd last through the winter. Until I took sick, I slept upstairs with my sisters where it was cold as the devil's heart. So Mama fixed me a bed downstairs in front of the stove, trying to keep me warm, and Papa carried me wherever I needed to go. Around Thanksgiving, the coughing got worse. At Thanksgiving dinner, after Pa said grace, Mama choked up and got tears in her eyes. I don't feel as thankful as I might, she said. Be thankful she's still here, Libby, Pa told her. I knew he was talking about me. A while later, they got the doctor to come. He had a sad look of a man who's given up. When he took Mama and Papa aside to talk, he shook his head, like there was nothing he could do. The fever's taken hold. If only she'd been stronger to start with, I heard him say. She's in the Lord's hands now. Sure enough, I had a fever that left me shaking one minute and burning up the next. In between, I dreamed that I was floating in the air, right up near the rafters of the room. On Christmas Eve, like a dream, I heard Papa tell Mama to pray with him that I'd make it to Christmas morning. It was a rough night, and Mama never left my side a minute. The next day when I woke up, the first thing I laid eyes on was my stocking. Peeping up over the top was my very own baby doll, my precious Miss Zeldy. Oh, and there was a tiny chair and bed for her, carved by Papa. Mama had made her all kinds of hats and aprons and such. Pretty things, even a coat with real fur collar. I thought Miss Zeldy was the most beautiful doll in the world. Little did I know what powers she held. I cuddled her and kissed her. Papa teased me by calling me Little Mama. I liked that. I thought of Miss Zeldy as my own baby, as much as any of my 6 children were later on. That's the gospel truth. That night at bedtime, I heard Mama tell Papa, "She made it through the day. That doll has worked a miracle." Of course, he reminded her that only the Lord can work a miracle. Mama said she didn't care who made the miracle. She only cared that I was alive. I'd never heard Mama talk back to Papa like that before. I rocked Miss Zeldy and tucked her into her bed next to mine. I left a thimble full of water next to her tiny bed, like Mama left a cup of water by my bed. And later, when my fever rose and I felt that floating feeling again, I reached over and held on to Miss Zeldy. No matter how much I loved my doll, I still kept getting weaker and weaker. When Mama put a piece of flannel cloth on my chest with kerosene and turpentine remedy on it, I made her put one on Miss Zeldy too. Every night I put out her thimble of water and kissed her good night. Sometime between Christmas and the New Year, the doctor came to call, and he still had that sad look. Her heart is weak, I heard him tell Mama and Papa. Keep praying, but you best prepare for the worst. It was odd, because even though I could hear them talking, I felt like I was floating on a cloud above them. What they said didn't seem to have anything to do with me. Floating felt nice. I was drifting further and further away, like I was gliding up to heaven. I'd always liked to watch the barn swallows soar and swoop across the sky. That's what I was doing, soaring and swooping, flying farther and farther away from earth. Then I heard a voice. Although I'd never heard it before, I knew right away who that voice belonged to. "Little Mama, I'm thirsty. Little Mama, I want something to drink," the voice called. I didn't like being interrupted. I wanted to float forever, but that funny voice kept calling me. "Little Mama, wake up. I need a drink. Give me a drink now, Mama, please." She was thirsty, you see, and I had to be a good mother like my own mamma was. I had to stop floating and come back down to earth and get Miss Zeldy a drink. I was certain of it then as I am now. When I opened my eyes, her thimble of water had tipped over and was bone dry. I sat up in bed like I had never been sick, and from that minute on I got better and better. The doctor said I was just out of my head until the fever broke. Papa called it a miracle and preached about it in church. When I tried to tell them I heard Miss Zeldy, they smiled and said it was the sickness. Why won't anyone believe it was my doll? I moaned in frustration. I believe you, Mamma said. She kissed me good night and held Zeldy too. And kissed Zeldy too. I've never forgotten that she believed that this humble doll came to life for a few sweet moments to save my life. Yes, young man, to this day I know I wouldn't have ever awakened in the glory of this world again if she hadn't called for that water. I wouldn't have married Hank Pritchard, raised 6 healthy children, and taught Bible stories to young folks like you. The doll's a wonder of the world. Maybe not of this world, but of the next one. You write that down, Eben McAllister. When I tell you this is a wonder, you'd better listen. Because just as miracles were worked with loaves and fishes, one was worked through this doll. If anybody says it's not true, you have them come talk to me. There was no arguing with Miss Pritchard when she took that tone. I picked up my tablet and began to write. Even though her story was peculiar, but jitters, it amazed me, and it might even get me to Colorado. Even so, I knew that I couldn't ever sit in Sunday school again without seeing that shriveled up face and those hollow eyes. I decided not to think about it for a while. Instead, I flew back down the hill with Sal at my heels as if there were no such thing as gravity to hold me to the earth.